Welcome to Sportskeeda MMA. My name is David Andrew, and today we have the pleasure of having a conversation with one of the earliest insiders when it comes to MMA in India. He currently serves as the host for UFC on Sony Sports Network. He's the owner of Superhuman Gym based in Manipal and Gandhinagar, a former Muay Thai practitioner, a combat sports author, and at the heart of it all, an ardent MMA fan. Somesh Kamra. Thank you for taking out the time. Thank you so much for taking out the time for all of
Thank
us
you
at
so much.
Sportskeeda MMA here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right. Um, as we approach this mega event, as we're celebrating UFC, 30 years for the UFC 291 is certainly considered to be one of the best events on paper till now. And of course, we have a number of questions relating to that, considering your analysis and your ability to analyze the entire event. However, there was something that I thought I'd sort of bring up before, especially considering you're in a very unique position as an Indian insider of MMA, right? Because as I have seen in many of your interviews, you've mentioned again and again how this is a burgeoning industry. Like it's just blowing up and you're clearly at the forefront of it, right? So you undoubtedly play a key role in showcasing the UFC to our Indian audience, right? And as MMA gains traction in India, how do you yourself as an analyst make sure you're up to date with your analysis? And adding to that, would there be certain resources that you would suggest to Indian MMA fans, considering the language barrier, so that we can better understand the intricacies of the sport?
That's a great question. So, if I may just kind of go back a few years, I got hooked onto the sport maybe in the year 2002, 2003, when Pride FC used to come on Star Sports. So typically what happened is, because I was maybe the first, one of the first few guys, or maybe the first 100 people who kind of viewed the sport on TV. I think I just immersed myself in the sport, and we've seen people like Anderson Silva, Fedor, who from Pride FC have moved on to other organizations. So typically it is more of the fact that I just spent time with the sport, so I started understanding it better. And it's not just TV time. I actually went to Russia to learn the sport. So I was with Fedor's team in Russia. Try to understand as to how they market the sport, how they do the events, how is the training done, etc., etc. Then in 2013, when I got a call from the UFC to do something in India, that's when I met them. They had come to Mumbai, and we spoke. We did things. In 2014, they flew me down to the headquarters at Las Vegas. So it's just the fact that I've spent so much time around the sport and the people and the fighters. That has just got this little path in my head as to how things work, and like stuff like that. So it's just the fact that I've spent so much time with the sport is how I analyze the sport and how I think I need to project the sport.
I totally get that. And that's what, as the sport sort of grows, it's important to have people who have really been dedicated, as a viewer, as a fan, and as yourself as a practitioner, who's really, bridging the gap between, the so-called UFC brass and the Indian, situation here. As we can all agree that there is a huge poverty sort of, difference as well, which requires people like you who have the knowledge and the ability to bridge that gap to fill that spot. So I'm sure a lot of us, all of us, appreciate the work that you're doing for us in that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Speaking of practitioner, I can see a boxing bag that's hanging behind there. So I don't know if that's for aesthetic or is that really to
right. As of now, I'd say
blowing.
As of considering the amount of time I've spent doing it, I'll say it's for aesthetics, but yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
As a journalist, I believe it is important. If I'm a journalist of the sport, I think it's important to dedicate myself to at least practicing it. So I do try my best.
Absolutely. In fact, I tell most people, before you, become some kind of expert in it,
right?
You need to practice it. You need to know what it takes to actually go in there, maybe get hit, couple of training programs, get the butterflies. So I think those are very important. And most of the people that I've seen, be it even my co-panelist Arjun Chipalkatti, there have been times where he has trained He has got knocked out. We have got choked out. We have felt the pain. We felt the shin to shin clashes,
Right.
but people who don't do that,
Right.
and like no, no offense to, anybody out there, but people who don't do that, who just view the sport and who sit behind a mic and start, doing their stuff, rambling. I think they're not the best people to, speak to, about the sport, because they have not really been there. If you have not been down that road, it's very difficult to get a complete picture of it.
I totally agree, and I think even like considering how tough the sport is, I think even the fighters really, like, you can't really sympathize or empathize with them unless you've even tried it once. And I think it's
Absolutely.
sort yeah, so it's sort of, even in their eyes, they sort of appreciate the fact that you're at least giving it a try yourself instead of
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
right. All right, so moving on to this really exciting card, like one of the first questions I had was regarding Wonder Boy's fight, right? So
Right.
one thing that I noticed was that it's sort of an anomaly. I might be wrong here, but Wonder Boy is one of the few fighters who's come into the UFC and he's been able to, if not completely, but he's managed to preserve his karate roots while
Yeah.
fighting as a fighter. And
Yeah.
um, if we look at the Indian scene, we have a lot of wushu fighters, karate fighters. Pooja Tomar is an example. So, do you
Right.
think this could Wonder Boy could serve, as an example for how these martial arts forms can transition to such a high level? Because Pooja Tomar, recently I watched her MFN fight, and like her performance was absolutely admirable. So,
It's
I,
fabulous.
yes, so I was wondering what is your opinion on how this could transition to MMA in the future?
So, that's a very good question. Wonderboy Thompson is about 40 years old now,
Yeah.
and he's one of those last, breeds of fighters that actually started off with one discipline and then adapted to MMA. So, karate, kickboxing, and then he came into MMA. So, he's I think one of those last few breeds that are still there at the high level, who are performing at that level, who is still ranked and who is still active in competition. So, I do believe as we move ahead, I think in the next 5 years, we will not have anybody from a single discipline. There will be fighters who are always training in MMA. Of course, they'll have the strong points. Some people may be good grapplers, some people, may be good boxers, but people who are now getting into the sport are starting off with MMA itself. So they grapple, they do jujitsu, they do, their boxing, kickboxing, all of that. So I think moving ahead, it's going to be very, very difficult for a single discipline fighter to excel at that level. If anybody has to excel, I think they'll have to encompass the game completely, keeping the rules in mind. So to answer your question, I think it's just going to be very difficult for a single discipline person like a wushu, fighter or a karate fighter to get to that level and perform. I think GSP, Wonderboy Thompson are the two absolute standouts,
Right.
that have done this. But we've seen how Junior Dos Santos's career went. Even though he's a great boxer, the moment Cain Velasquez beat him in their second fight, we saw how his career just went down from there. It just became difficult because the sport is evolving so quickly and the fighters are becoming so good so early that it's just becoming difficult for the 35, 40-year-olds to hang around there unless your name is Anderson Silva.
Yeah. I don't agree. Or Wonder Boy, like his last performance against Kevin Holland was like a work of art. So,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
having mentioned that, what do you think would be his key to, the key to his longevity, like in the sport? Like I think he's actually 40 right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He's 40 years old.
Like, what do you think would be the key to his longevity in the sport?
That's a good question because jokingly, me and my co-panelists call him the Ashish Nehra of the UFC. So, he's the kind of guy that you think he's done with his career, and then he just bounces back and he beats, Kevin Holland. In fact, I think he lost to Darren Till, then he lost to Anthony Pettis with that vicious knockout, and somehow he came back and he beat Vicente Luque, and then he beat Jeff Neal. So he has this win-loss, 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 win-loss. But if you see, he's not what I feel where Wonderboy Thompson has been smart is he's very smart with his recovery. So he fights once or twice in a year, but he's not out there in the media. He's not doing these press conferences, launching whiskeys, flying private jets here and there. I think he's very smart with his approach. He's not spending too much time in the flamboyance, and he's sticking to his basics, and he's recovering well. So I think that is one aspect why he's coming back so strong and still putting on these performances, is because he's taking sufficient rest, he's taking his time, he's sticking to the basics, and I think he's not a businessman. He's a true martial artist, and that's what I really respect about him. It's right now at, I think, 39-40 that he signed on with Paradigm to kind of become, maybe a little richer than what he is. He's also signed on with a modeling agency, I think, a couple of years back, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think he's been very smart with his approach, and he's not gone the business route like most other fighters. He's been a true martial artist, and man, if at 40 he's still competing at this level and he's ranked, I think kudos to him, man. He's truly a work of art.
I totally agree, and I even agree with your point. Like the point being that in today's time, it seems like it's very easy to get all these brand deals, especially if you have a name. And I'm sure it would have been very easy for Wonder Boy, because he's such an ideal representative for the sport, to be able to get all these deals. But you're right, he sticks to those roots of martial arts, of what got him there. And I think his father also plays a very imperative role in that. Like he's brought him up in a way in which he's trained him since he was a child, and they work together, and that team bonding also really works out.
Right. So his father, Mr. Ray Thompson, is his coach, mentor, and his manager. And the good part is, it's not just in the UFC embedded, but Wonderboy Thompson still takes classes at his father's martial art school, which I think is quite humble. It's quite nice because, when you meet the younger generation and you're passing on the knowledge, I think that's the greatest gift that you can, give back to the sport. So I think he's one of those legends who will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. Sadly, this sport is such that there's a BMF belt, but there's no NMF belt. And if you ask me, the only person who will ever hold that belt is Stephen.
I agree. I totally agree. Right. Coming to his opponent, we've seen a lot of his fights. He's one of the most athletic fighters we've ever seen, right? So one of my questions would be, like, is Michel Pereira like a prime example of an athlete who's, got this God-gifted like prowess as an athlete, but he lacks the correct decision-making ability? Like, or do you think that would be a judgment that I'm making too early? Is that a wrong question for both?
So most people don't know. They may think that Pereira is a veteran and he's been there for a very long time, but he's just 29 years old. Right. So he's not a very old competitor. And at the same time, I think he's right now on a 5 or a 6 fight winning streak. Right. So I do think that his worst is behind him. This is going to be his toughest test after Ponzinibbio that he had beaten last year. Right. So, but yeah, I completely get your point, because there are moments. Now, what happens is, when you are in a fight, and if it is kind of getting a little violent, strategy goes out of the out of the window. Right. You rely on your natural skills. Like, for example, when Dustin Poirier is in trouble, he doesn't back down. He in fact pushes forward and he looks to knock the other person out, even though his corner is asking him to relax. Right. So most of these guys really, when times get difficult, they rely on their instinct, which comes naturally. And some people are aggressive, some people are not the smartest. But I think Pereira is one of those guys who has got his mind back together. He's in a 5 or 6 fight winning streak, and I think this is going to be his tough test. It's going to be a good one, but he has improved drastically. He's definitely improved drastically.
I certainly agree. Like in his last few outings, he's much more measured. Like, he takes his time with everything. So I totally agree with that. And I would say, like, another example of the same would be Chandler. Like, he's one of the most athletic and most powerful fighters we've seen, explosive fighters, but sometimes he just throws strategy out of the window. That's also to cater to the crowd, but also because, like, he really enjoys that. Clearly, he enjoys doing that, like, which is appealing to the crowd. So, I mean, I hope, Because considering what Kevin Holland did when he decided not to grapple at all with Wonder Boy, we saw what happened. So I hope,
Exactly.
right, Michelle Pereira makes the wise decision as well.
Exactly. In fact, Chandler is one of those guys who you can contain in a bottle for maybe 2.5, 3 minutes. And after that, it's like asking, Virendra Sehwag to play defensive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe 3 balls he'll do that, and he'll be like, I don't care, man, and he'll go for the big hit.
What's the point of those big quads? Like he has to explode. There's no point.
Yeah. I think it's all here. And Chandler is one of those guys. If in any other organization he would have started off with the UFC, I think he may have been in the 135, 145 division, because most coaches would have asked him to kind of cut the weight, cut the muscle, and be in that bantamweight, featherweight division, because he's so huge. At the same time, he doesn't have any reach advantage. The only thing that he has is he can quickly get under the pocket and throw that left hook, which is his weapon of mass destruction.
Right.
Which he even used was a Dan Hooker, which was his debut fight. So I think he's just one of those guys that has to go with this particular gameplay. He can contain for a bit, but after a while he says, listen, let's just go from 0 to 100 in a matter of 3 seconds.
Right. I mean, and that's the question. Like, I'm not sure I've seen too many people who perform that way, or fighters that way, who've been able to reach that top, because for some reason it seems like you need to have a bit of control over this thing that kicks in order to be able to just sort of go into that final echelon. So it's really intriguing, because at the end of the day we love them as fans. If Chandler and Gaethje are fighting, Poirier is fighting, we're always tuning in. But
Absolutely.
It seems like this very thing which makes us really enjoy them could sometimes be their undoing as a fighter.
Whilst I agree with you, but old school fans such as myself, we really respect people like the Diaz brothers, because the Diaz brothers never came in with a mindset of keeping their unbeaten record, or they just came there to fight. It's a fight. It's not a strategy. The old school Quinton Rampage Jackson, Wanderlei Silva, these guys just came to fight. They didn't care if they win or they lose. They may be on an 8-fight losing streak, and they still may be having hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pay-per-view buys, because they are that exciting. And I think Chandler is cut from that cloth. He is from that thing that win or lose, whatever, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to bang, and in case I win, my post-fight interviews are also exciting. So
No, he's really good on the mic, no doubt about that.
I remember the time when Chandler knocked out Tony Ferguson, and he does his backflip, and the crowd went woo, and he's like, oh, one more, and he did a second backflip, and he did the third backflip, and I was like, wow, and this all just comes by instinct. You don't plan it. Someone like an Anshul Jubli, when we were there, and he was like, Namaste UFC, India's here, boom, trending.
I mean, that's something that you can't sort of like just manufacture. It comes from the inside, right?
Right.
All right. So coming to the next fight, Kevin Holland. It's Kevin Holland is always like a tough outing for anyone, unless you're Chimaev, of course. However, do you think his his activity, he's always really active, right? So do you think his activity inside the octagon, also his ability to, obviously when he fought Chimaev, the grappling will not be comparable. However, he's really shown that he picks up concepts really fast. So do you think the activity and the ability to pick up stuff fast gives him a slight edge over Chiesa, who's sort of coming back after a while at 291?
Yes, it definitely does. In fact, after Chimaev, I remember that even Wonderboy Thompson had TKO'd him. So he had those 2 losses that kind of set him back, and it was in the later half of 2022. But then when he came back with Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is another very aggressive fighter, I think that really changed his mindset, and he finished him off in the 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken. So and honestly, Kevin Holland is a veteran. He has over 30 fights, 35 fights to his name. So he's been there for long enough to kind of get the nitty-gritties of being at this level. But
Right.
honestly, Michael Chiesa is another tough nut to crack. He's I mean, I've had the pleasure of being with him like a couple of times, in person, and generally for that weight division, he's huge.
Huge.
Ho-
No, no
You
doubt.
know,
Yeah.
however, his last two opponents, Vicente Luque and Sean Brady, were abs. I mean, I just could not wrap around my head that Sean Brady, decisioned him and beat him, and it was very very clear. So it was quite sad. However, he's not fought in 2022. These are
Right.
all 2021 fights. So it'll be very interesting to see as to how he comes back. I feel Kevin Holland is mentally the tougher guy going into this fight.
All right. That's interesting. Right. Right. Thank you. Uh, Mentally tougher. Now that you mentioned mental toughness, let's come to one of our other OG fighters, Tony Ferguson. Right. At the
Right.
age of 39, like I would say, I sort of became a fan of the sport at the time when Tony came in, and obviously we all love him, and it seems like he sort of reached the end of his career, right? And everybody
Right.
knows he's El Kukui. He's known for his toughness and resilience. But do you think like it's reached a point where this quality of his, which we also really love and cherish, has almost become detrimental to his health and his career? Do you think? Like, what would be your opinion on that?
There's this meme or this thing that floats around, that normally when we talk about Tony Ferguson, there is this thing that people ask that Tony is the type of guy, and then
Yeah.
you have to complete it. So honestly, Tony is the type of guy that you cannot say anything to, because
Right.
each time he comes into the octagon, there's a new coach, a new corner, a new city, maybe a new planet or something on those lines. But on a serious note, when it comes to Tony Ferguson, I think after the Beniel Dariush fight, I really wanted him to hang up his gloves, because when you're on a 10-11 fight win streak, and then
Right.
suddenly that Justin Gaethje mad fight happens where you get pounded and clobbered, followed by the Charles Oliveira loss, and then you had the Beniel Dariush loss. Honestly, mentally, as a fan and as a well-wisher, I thought that should have been the point where he cuts it and he stops his career. But after that Michael Chandler knockout, then the Nate Diaz guillotine that happened. So I think he's just pushing the envelope right now, and I mean, I think it would just be a miracle if he gets past even Bobby Green. I really don't want to say that, because Tony Ferguson in my eyes is one of the most respectful and respected fighters. I don't want him to go down that road, but honestly, he is fighting this weekend, and if he gets beaten this time by Bobby Green, which I think will be his sixth consecutive loss, uh,
Right.
I think it's a couple of fights late, but I think he should hang up his gloves, and this should be it for uh, Tony Ferguson.
I think as a fan, I would totally agree. But then at the end of the day, as you mentioned, um,
Tony
it's
is the type of guy.
Tony is the type of guy. Right?
you know,
Like
uh, you
we'll
know,
certainly leave it at that when it comes to Tony, right?
you
All
know,
right. So
if people
the the the
even look
sorry,
at someone,
sorry.
yeah, sorry, even when people look at someone like Jose Aldo,
Right.
when he lost to Conor McGregor, honestly, we never saw that same fighter back. That had 10 consecutive defenses, who was the champion in the featherweight division for so many years. So what happens, there's always that tipping point for each fighter where after that we don't see them how they were earlier.
Right.
So I think Tony Ferguson, according to me, it was the Benil Dariush decision that he lost. uh, I think that was the one where I said, I think he should hang up his gloves.
Right. I mean, Dariush ended up hyperextending his knee, and even then he didn't tap. It was like a war. It was insane.
It
Like
was crazy. It was crazy.
I
There were all sorts of extensions and
yeah,
locks and everything that was put out there, and this rubber band just didn't tap out.
yeah, he just doesn't like. At the end of the day, I guess all of us wish him the best, and we hope that he comes out of this fight unscathed, and hopefully with a win, at least from my side as a fan. But,
Absolutely.
all right, coming to the co-main event, obviously, like I don't know, this card gives me a very like sort of dark. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but like a dark feeling. compared to the 290 card. Like those were like all the bright stars of the UFC, and like these are all the like the
The underdogs, the
yeah, the
guys.
dark horses of the sort of the the brand. And of course, when it comes to that, it's Alex Pereira and Jan Blachowicz. Like we have two of these like light. He's at light heavyweight now. He's competed at light heavyweight in kickboxing as well,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And like we've seen his power at middleweight, so you can only imagine what's going to happen at light heavyweight, right? But
Absolutely.
there's only one concern, and I was wondering if you share the same concern, and that is that Pereira is fighting Jan, who's known for his Polish power, 2.5 months after getting knocked out or TKO'd, technically, by Adesanya. Like, do you think like that gap is a bit too short for the way he was KO'd?
That's a very interesting question because nobody has asked me that.
Right.
I do believe it is quite short.
Right.
However, the fact that the doctors gave him a clearance, he was back in training, he's not cutting weight, and he's back in the octagon just goes to show that Alex Pereira was not as hurt as the people thought that he would have been hurt.
Right.
कभी-कभी ऐसे भी होता है ना कि you get that shot on the head, somewhere in the temple, and there's a flash knockout.
Right.
But you recover quite quickly. Normally from such a, KO, like for example, I think when Chandler KO'd Tony Ferguson, I think he was out for a good amount of time post that.
Right. Right.
So the fact that the doctors gave him a clearance, he started training, he's not cutting weight, and he's back in the octagon just makes me believe that for me it was a KO. I don't know how people say it's a TKO, but for me it was a knockout. But I just feel that it looked worse than it actually was. So and honestly, Pereira is as you rightly said, there's a dark guy from some dungeon in Brazil to somebody who's in some corner of Poland. These are. You couldn't have said it better. It's a very dark card,
Right,
and I don't know, how can Dustin Poirier, who's such a nice guy, fight for the BMF belt here? So, I just think it's a very quick turnaround. If I'm not mistaken, that fight was in April or something on those lines, So it's just 2.5 months, and he's back, and he's fighting a former champion, somebody who has beaten Israel Adesanya when Adesanya tried to move up. So I think it's a very interesting fight.
Right. I mean, now that you mentioned this, like I just thought, I don't know if you're aware of this, but recently only we found out that Vicente Luque suffered a brain hemorrhage when he fought Geoff Neal back in 2022.
Right. I wasn't aware of it.
Right. I'm pretty sure like most people weren't aware. It's just that he had to, I think that is the reason his fight with RDA was initially pushed back, because the commission wanted him to go through more tests. So just goes to show sort of that sometimes it seems that even though the fighter might feel like he's dealt with the blows well enough, it seems that sometimes later on these kind of situations can take a sort of a bad turn. So it's really interesting, to see how fighters make these choices, because considering the fact that if Luque is known for his action, I'm pretty sure he would have just jumped back into another fight. And
absolutely,
thankfully, we haven't had a death in the cage as of now for the sport yet. So, and hopefully that will be the case always. So, I thank God that we are able to catch these things because of science, and I hope we continue to do that for the sake of the athletes. Right.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the sort of the main event. This is one question that I have, because we sort of touched upon this a bit before, was that Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje are perhaps two of the most decorated contenders when it comes to this division, the lightweight division, which is one of the most stacked divisions. We all agree on that.
Absolutely.
What would be the point that just doesn't allow them to, they both are former interim champions.
Yes.
However, they never have been able to get their hand on gold. Obviously, both of them faced Khabib and Oliveira. I agree. But like, apart from the opponents, what else do you think is the stepping stone for them to sort of reach that point?
To be really honest, Dave, I think with Islam and Charles Oliveira hanging at the top out there, I feel it's very unlikely that either of them would ever become the champ, according to me. unless and until, Islam, in case he beats Oliveira this time in Abu Dhabi and he says that I'm done, there's nothing more for me to prove.
Right.
And, then there's an Oliveira and a Dustin Poirier kind of fight that comes into the play. So
Right.
unless that happens, I don't see either of them kissing that belt anytime soon, even though I would love it. I would love it if Dustin Poirier actually becomes the champ.
Right.
But I have my reservations on that as of now, because the lightweight division always has people like Michael Chandler who's hanging around there. There's Conor McGregor who's always hanging around there. So I think that the top five itself are so tough that it's difficult now to actually kiss that belt.
I think I'd agree with you, and like I guess we'll have some more clarity after this event, especially
Yeah.
considering the war that's going to be there. It'll be interesting to see if they both are even in a state to maybe take on the fight, because Oliveira hasn't really signed on, or I think he has, but
He
in
has.
any case, in
Yeah.
any case, I think I agree with you, but as a fan myself, as you are, it would be really amazing to see both of them, either of them, get their hands on the belt at some point, because they've really sort of served the fans in a good
Absolutely, yes. But I don't, I think Justin Gaethje is past that point, because he's this,
interesting.
he's this brawling fighter, and honestly, that fighting style is extremely exciting for people like us to watch.
Right.
But once you're in that top level, with someone like a Charles Oliveira, who after getting knocked down comes back and chokes people out, I think it's a very scary space to be in, because if your hardest shot cannot knock this guy out, then pretty much you have no other tools to beat him.
I agree.
So unless it's so flush clean that he doesn't get up. And honestly, I've not seen that with Charles Oliveira in a very long time, where someone has flushed him out
Hard
and
thing, right.
he's not kind of got up. He always is in that position where he takes a shot, he plonks down and he waits for it to come. So it's just one of those situations where some people cannot cross that door of becoming a champion. And sadly, I think Dustin Poirier / Justin Gaethje both are currently standing on that door, but it's very difficult for them to get past that situation.
I agree. Right. Okay, since we're on the same, since we're at the main event right now, one question would be, I think I might have an idea what you're going to say, but still, I'll go for it. Who do you think has improved more since their last fight? It's been 5 years since they fought,
Yeah,
and it ended with a fourth round TKO. Right?
right.
So who do you think has improved more? Because I think that's like really intriguing to see, because both of them have had really spectacular performances in the UFC. Like,
Right. Right. So, I have a very simple answer to that. So, normally the way I look at the sport is, someone who adapts his or her style in a way where they keep their strong points, but they are always constantly evolving with the sport and moving on. I think that fighter is a stronger, matured, more evolved fighter. And for me, that would clearly be Justin Gaethje, because he has moved on. He has got much stronger. His neck has become thicker. He's not getting knocked out. His boxing has become crisp. Also, mentally, he's become very calm. He's not the same guy who at featherweight who got rattled by Conor McGregor in the press conference and eventually got knocked out. He's a completely different fighter. He has evolved beautifully over these last 6 or 7 years, and he slowly climbed up the ladder, not only being a good guy, but opening a foundation, earning money, as well as knocking out his opponents and winning fights. So to answer the question, I think Dustin Poirier is the one who's more evolved, who has become a calmer, better fighter. Justin Gaethje, yeah, whilst he is an older, matured fighter, I think his style remains the same, because he's always in that war zone, in the
right.
second, third round, even though he's got excellent wrestling, we've never really seen him go down, and use his strength. He's still banging, he's still chopping those legs. And in that zone, what happens when you get knocked a few times, at that weight class, your instinct takes over. And the only way he knows to fight is to stand and bang. So I think his trigger is just waiting to shoot. He doesn't have that ability like Dustin Poirier to take that breather, move a couple of steps back, rewire the brain and then go back into competition. He's just there. But at the same time, honestly, that has worked really well for him. So if we see the Rafael Fiziev fight, a lot of people thought that Fiziev, now, Justin Gaethje is done and Fiziev will walk over him. But man, he gave Fiziev the beating of his life. I don't think he's, the same ever. He did the same with Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler. So, I think the only two losses that he's had in the recent time is versus Charles Oliveira and Khabib. Otherwise, he's just been winning,
And 11 UFC performance bonuses. So the excitement is like just always there.
Through the roof. And I think even Dustin Poirier, his last 6 or 7 fights have either been for the championship belt, or he's won a performance of a night bonus, or he's got some bonus. So honestly, this main event is a 5-rounder. I don't think it's going to go the distance because it's going to be absolutely detrimental for both of these warriors to go, 25 minutes. But it's definitely there's definitely multiple bonuses on this card.
Right. All right. So just before we wind up, I have this final question, and like no interview with MMA, considering when it comes to MMA, is ever complete unless you end it with Conor McGregor. So, so do you think the winner of the main event could, in some scenario, be lined up for a fight with McGregor next year? Especially because like there's a lot of rumors that McGregor is sort of put off with Chandler as an opponent, and he's still not joined the testing pool. And whether Chandler will wait for McGregor to come now, because they expected him to come back in December. He's still not joined the pool yet, so that doesn't seem to be in the question yet. Do you think the winner of this fight could possibly get that?
That's a very interesting question because Conor McGregor is one of those weird characters. I mean, even if he doesn't win for 10 consecutive years, he is still going to be relevant and he's still going to call the shots depending on how he wants them to. So, it's so interesting to actually see that because I think his last win was what Cowboy Cerrone, in the year 2020. And before that, his win was with Eddie Alvarez, which was 2016. So honestly, this guy has not been winning. At the same time, he's a marketable guy and he still calls the shots. So honestly, with a character like McGregor, you cannot really rely on him till he signs those papers. So we don't know. At the same time, we've got Islam and Charles Oliveira fighting in October. So, there could be a good clash where, the winner of Islam versus, Charles could, face the winner of Dustin versus Justin. And it'll be a good fight if the loser of both also face each other. So I think that'll be quite interesting. But when it comes to Conor, we have seen the Ultimate Fighter. We know that there's been a complete whitewash, almost a whitewash. And Chandler has turned out to be the better coach also. And with McGregor, what happens? I think it's all here. If he feels he's been outclassed in TUF, maybe he's not motivated enough, or that fire is not coming out from within to face this guy. If, say, roles would have been reversed and, say, McGregor would have had that 7 wins and 1 loss in TUF as a coach, I think the situation would be totally different. McGregor would be in the pool. He would be training. He would be calling out Chandler. He would be abusing, his adopted sons, and he would be doing all of that. So he's a product of his own mind, and I think his mind is quite unpredictable.
All right. I mean, it's with this we sort of come to the end of our interview, and like I'd really like to thank you from our side at Sportskeeda for taking out the time. I understand you're very busy, and I'd just like to sort of wish you all the best as you prepare for the upcoming event. And I hope that we get an opportunity to have a conversation with you as soon as we can again.
Absolutely, David.
Get your insight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much, Somesh. Thank you.
Today we have here with us Mr. Arjun Chipalkatti, who is the UFC expert for Sony TV India, and we'll mostly be discussing the UFC 291 card, which goes down at the Delta Center at Salt Lake City, Utah, this Sunday for Indian fans. So, pleasure having you, Arjun. Firstly,
it is an absolute pleasure to always talk to you, Shan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Pleasure to talk to you as well. So, without further ado, since we don't have much time, we'll start with Derek Lewis. He's making a return on the prelims card against Marcos Rogelio de Lima, who is a pretty well-rounded fighter, I would say.
Yes, he is.
Stand his feet on the ground and grapple as well. So yeah, like I was just asking. So Lewis is on a 3-fight skid now. Do you think he has chances of making a comeback against a pretty well-rounded fighter?
You know, it's the way he's lost his fights. They've been unfortunately by stoppage. Definitely. And in the heavyweight division, when you start getting stopped, it's a sign of a deteriorating chin. There was a time by Derek Lewis, you could hit him with a truck and nothing would happen to him. But he's now getting stopped. He hits very, very hard. So, see, you can't count out anybody in the heavyweights because they hit like, it's one shot knockout power. They all possess this power. So anything can happen. But I'm saying him coming off a 3-fight skid, it depends because the way he immediately said he's going to retire. He's done with the sport. And then if he's coming back, that means he may have found a new motivation. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does against Lima.
He has leaned a lot.
Oh my God, he has lost so much weight. He's lost so much weight. And that'll be interesting to see if he can carry that weight. If he's lost a lot of weight, his speed, his mobility, his footwork will all improve. And if his speed is improved, if he can retain the same power that he had at the heavier weight, if he's got the same power, it'll be a really fun, interesting fight.
Definitely. I think we just need a little bit of technique from Derek Lewis. Just a little bit of technique is what.
It's not about technique. Derek Lewis can shut your lights off whenever he wants to. It's that kind of knockout power, and it takes, like I said, in the heavies, it takes one punch.
Thing is, like we have seen De Lima go the distance with durable fighters. So, Lewis, does he have it in him to knock someone out? He's not getting any younger, definitely, is what I want to know.
Unfortunately, age does not play a factor here because I've seen, Dan Henderson, well into his late 30s, was knocking people out. Right. And Randy Couture, well into his 40s, was winning championships. So there is no guarantee of what happens. But I can tell you one thing, Derek Lewis will never have a boring fight. Lima will never have a boring fight. They're both going to bring it.
Right. Moving on to the main card. So Kevin Holland. So if you remember at one point, Kevin Holland was the fighter of the year on all platforms. MMA Junkie, UFC fighter of the year.
I remember.
2020. And since then, it has been quite a fall from grace, if that's how I should put it.
It was his knockout of Jacare, if I remember correctly. Jacare
from bottom position. Oh my God.
Correct. That was the most unbelievable knockout because to generate that kind of power from there to knock somebody like Jacare out in someone's guard is very difficult. So he is a highly touted as a very, very big prospect. I would still say he's a prospect because the kind of matchups he had were very difficult ones. He got pushed against a lot of wrestlers. And he's been working on his wrestling. He's becoming more and more well-rounded.
Right.
He's still a very good striker, very charismatic fighter. So I never count him out of any fight.
So in his fight week interview, that's what he said, that, this is how he would like to take a Sean O'Malley approach to his career right now. As in, like, he would like to fight Michael Chiesa and then take on strikers, a few. And then again prove himself against another wrestler. One level up, but take it slow. Which I think is a smart way to go about it.
I think it's a very good matchup because Chiesa poses a set of certain threats that might not be as challenging for Kevin Holland. Because Kevin Holland has faced heavy grapplers. Kevin Holland has faced good BJJ guys. And as we all know, his striking is stellar. Exactly. So I think Chiesa versus Holland is a great matchup. And it's the sleeper fight of the card, according to me.
Then Tony Ferguson.
So, my favorite.
Yeah, So I just want to know, do you think Tony should retire regardless of a win?
No. Okay, no. Tony is as old as I am. He's 39.
Okay.
He's 39 years of age.
He's 40.
40 abhi now. So see, look, it's who can say who is to retire when? He's never been, I think after the Gaethje fight, yes, he was on a bit of a skid, but he's lost to Nate Diaz, he's lost to Chandler, And it's not like he's lost to, nobodies. He's lost to the cream of the crop.
Right. Definitely.
Like really, really good fighters.
Yes.
So Tony always has something to bring to the fight. You can never count out El Cucui's mad spirit, and his technique and his striking is still there. It's not deteriorating.
Right. So yeah. So you think if he wins, he should stay on, and if he loses, he should definitely contemplate retirement, I think.
It's his call. I think it's nobody can tell an athlete when to stop. And I think Tony Ferguson should not. He think he's still got. It's also the manner in which he loses.
Yeah.
The first time he's gotten knocked out was against Chandler. That was the most brutal knockout I've seen.
Right.
And now if tomorrow that happens,
and he caught Chandler before getting knocked out. He did catch Chandler on the feet.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He dropped Chandler twice. And you can't count out a fighter whose skills are still there.
Right.
You can never count out. So, guys like Max Holloway, Tony Ferguson can fight well into their 40s because their conditioning is so good. They're so well conditioned as athletes. Even the Diaz brothers, you can see Diaz has taken so many shots over his career. He bleeds instantly as soon as because of all the scar tissue. But you can't count him out.
Right. Definitely. So moving on to Wonderboy Thompson and Michelle Pereira. I just want to know one thing.
That's a fight.
Great matchup. So I just want to know one thing. Do you think anyone will go for a takedown? Not Wonderboy. Do you think Pereira will go for a takedown? Is there any chance?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Strikers, there will be a bloodbath if you stand and trade on the field.
Oh man! No, Stephen Thompson is one of the most technical strikers, and he's got a very unique stance. He's got a sideways stance. He does not stand. He doesn't exactly stand orthodox or southpaw. I mean, it is orthodox or southpaw because of the angle of attack, but he's literally sideways. So a lot of attacks are negated the way he's standing. He comes in with a beautiful taekwondo technique, and he's such a solid striker. And whereas on the other hand, you've got Michelle Pereira, who's a wild man, who comes in with these insane spinning attacks and jumping attacks. And he's capable of, and he's very durable himself also.
Yes.
So it's going to be, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, either he makes this a very technical battle and takes it to the distance, drags him into deeper waters as the rounds go on, or both these bulls collide or फिर धमाका हो जाएगा.
But then nobody's going to shoot for a takedown.
Takedowns, I don't know. It's MMA. Yeah. Anybody can shoot anytime. But
desperate moments, everybody's a wrestler.
desperate. Even Connor shot against Nate Diaz. Remember the first one?
Yeah.
So no, desperate moments of course, but I think it's going to be a good striking war.
Matchup.
It should be at least.
It should be. And just again, how much time have we got? Yeah. So for the co-main event, do you think Jan Blachowicz? So Izzy's got one of the best takedown defense rates in the UFC, right? So Jan Blachowicz ran through Izzy, cruised through Izzy, I would say, through the takedown game, grappling game, cage wrestling, whatever you call it. Do you think he can implement the same game plan against Pereira? Though Pereira's takedown hasn't been tested yet, we don't know.
See, the thing is that Jan Blachowicz fought Israel Adesanya. When Israel Adesanya moved up for that super fight, he moved up to just, he was on top of the mountain. He was king of the hill. And he said, okay, I want to challenge the light heavyweight champion. And he moved up in a manner which was not exactly conducive to his weight. So it's like, okay, when say if I'm fighting at 82 kilos, okay, on fight night, I'm not necessarily 82 kilos. I may be 83, 84.
Right.
So when Israel Adesanya moved up to 205 pounds, he literally walked in at 206 pounds that night, because as a genuine 185 pounder who's used to fighting at 185 pounds, he walks around at 195 or 200. So when he made the weight for the light heavyweight cut, he reached 205. He was right in that slot. He was not very heavy. Jan Blachowicz, on the other hand, cuts down to 205. So he, on fight night, would be a cool 225, 230. That's the difference in the weight. And that is why the takedowns, eventually when you live, for example, if I have to grapple with you, I'm 6'3", 250 pounds, you will get tired in 1 minute by carrying my weight.
Exactly.
So that's what happened in the Izzy fight. Now against Michelle Pereira, who's himself a very heavy fighter, he walks around easily at 230.
Right.
Easy 230 he walks around. And to mention, he's training with Glover Teixeira, the man who beat Jan last. before Uncle M, before the draw with Uncle M. So he's being trained by Jan Blachowicz. I guarantee you he's working on his takedowns. Because if this, but you know what, knowing Jan Blahovich's Polish power and knowing Michel Pereira as well. I mean,
Alex Pereira.
Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, I did. Yeah. No, knowing Porta and Alex Pereira, I don't see this fight going to the ground very easily. If it comes to the takedowns, if it starts getting into the, if it starts getting into clinch positions, I might favor the Polish slightly, but you can't count out because the kind of training that Alex has been doing with Glover Teixeira, you might see a different grappling Alex Pereira.
Right, exactly. Coming on to the main event,
yes,
the BMF title fight. So, first question: what do you think of the gimmick talk that's going on? What do you think of it?
What is this gimmick talk? I don't know what this gimmick talk.
So people are saying that the BMF title in itself is a gimmick title, which is not essential to headline for Dustin and Justin to headline a card. They can just headline it without any title connotations.
See, look, the people, these people, they don't know how to have fun. Okay, they don't know how to have fun. A BMF title was created just as a fun thing by the UFC, by Dana White. It happened because of the feud between Masvidal and Nate Diaz initially, because they were talking trash. Who's the baddest? And therefore BMF came about. Now, if that translated into a little property title now that Masvidal is retired, I think that it's a fun thing. It's a really fun thing to attach to the fight. Because yes, we all know the BMF title doesn't. Everybody is a bad MF in the sport. You don't need a literal title, but it's just a little bit of fun. And these guys, they're always in title contention. They're number 2, number 3 in the division. They're always in the toughest fights. The fans are getting the biggest treat of their lives to see a rematch between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, which promises to be an absolute war. There should be something. There should be some belt given, and I couldn't think of a better belt than the BMF belt. This is almost on par with the title fight.
But yeah, that's a very nice way to put it, as you say, some bit of fun. And also, so do you think the winner of the fight gets a title shot? 2-3, 2-3 constantly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely in contention. The winner could definitely go on to fight the number 1 contender. I don't know who the number 1 contender is right now, because now we're going to see Charles Oliveira, who's going to be taking on Islam Makhachev again. I think it could very, very well lead to, because the fact is they're number 2 and number 3, so might as well be for the number 1 contenders. Right. They could definitely land up to be the next, fighting the champ next. But it all depends on what happens in Abu Dhabi, because if Charles Oliveira beats Islam Makhachev, then it becomes very interesting.
Yeah. And again, so this is.
I got a quick question for you before you wrap this up. I got a question for you. Do you think if Charles Oliveira wins against Islam Makhachev, Alex Volkanovski should go up and challenge him?
Charles Oliveira. That's a very interesting question.
Charles Oliveira versus Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah, Volkanovski should definitely, with a change in the title picture, there's no doubt Volkanovski should go up and.
That'll be fun.
And the kind of fight he had against Makhachev, and Makhachev finished Oliveira, so there's no doubt. And he will have a legit claim to it as well, I think.
No doubt. He will.
Now, my question for you. So, these two, both Dustin and Justin, have been submitted by Oliveira.
Yeah.
And Oliveira, we saw what Makhachev did to Oliveira. We can't deny him that. So, do you think whoever wins, if they get the title shot, do they have another chance against a grappler of that level, be it Makhachev or Oliveira?
Yes, they absolutely do, because the style of fighting of Charles's grappling is very different from that of Islam's grappling. Islam's grappling is very grinding. It's that Dagestani wrestling style approach that they walk slowly to get that takedown. Khabib, when it was Khabib's era, Khabib shot from a distance, grabbed your legs, dragged you to the ground and made you suffer, and then eventually ground and pounded you or got a submission victory. Islam Makhachev is now the second generation of Dagestani wrestler who has a great set of striking skills as well, which is what he did to Charles. He rocked Charles on the feet, then went to the ground and submitted him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens against a champion ace boxer like, Dustin Poirier and Gaethje. Both are incredible fighters, great boxers. And if you remember, Gaethje hurt Khabib on the feet. He was landing some good leg kicks and he hurt the champ and forced the takedown. It all depends on the approach of the of Islam Makhachev in that fight. Because what Khabib used to do to strikers is like, okay, when you see two strikers, you see a striker versus a wrestler like Khabib, would stalk you slowly. But the trick to dealing with Islam Makhachev is to start striking him from a distance. Don't let him come close.
Right.
And both Dustin and Justin would know this. And I think it's going to be a very different matchup considering that they've both dealt with Khabib before. They felt the power in the grappling. It might be a different fight this time around because obviously it's a different challenger.
Right. So I think we have already exceeded our time limit.
And, no.
Have we not?
No,
beautiful.
4-5 minutes.
Very good then. So do you think, by the way, the leg kicking game would play a big part in this fight, in the title fight between Justin and Dustin? See, even though Dustin does not use it that much, he's also an ace leg kicker, as we saw with Conor.
No, but not Justin Gaethje's level. Justin Gaethje can throw leg kicks from the pocket. Do you know the difference?
Exactly. Yeah, right.
It's throwing leg kicks from the pocket is very difficult because you're standing at close range.
He turns his body a particular way, arches it. I would say
he turns. He drops when he wants to throw a right leg kick, he'll drop his left shoulder so low, throw that leg kick, get off balance, and then come over with the left hook. If I would show you in a video, I would show it to you. Break it down to you, but it's a very unique way he fights. But the thing is that Poirier is the master of counter attacks. And he has great counters. So if Gaethje throws a leg kick, I guarantee you one of Poirier's hooks are ready. And he would have come trained for that. Because in the pocket, it's very difficult to brawl with Poirier. Very difficult.
Exactly. And for 5 rounds, Poirier doesn't mind, definitely.
Yeah, Poirier is ready, man. Both these guys are ready. But this fight is not going 5 rounds. That you can take in writing from me. This fight is not going 5 rounds.
It's a huge effort in itself, accepting a fight like this. Poirier, in his Fight Week interview, he was talking about this, as in, like, he has a kind of agreement with his wife. Like, when you do accept a fight, it's war. You cannot go into a fight expecting I will come out with damage, no matter how hard you train. Yeah. Obviously, like, if it ends in 15 rounds, knockout, well and good, very good. You can cherish, but you've got to be prepared for a 5-round war.
Exactly. And both these guys are such time-tested, battle-tested veterans now. I mean, Poirier is already a legend. Both these guys should have guaranteed spots in the Hall of Fame because of the style and the way in which they approach the sport. It's going to be so difficult to see both these guys because it's going to be so difficult to root for either guy because I love both these guys.
Exactly.
And I want both to win.
Again, about the co-main event. What happens to the light heavyweight 205 title picture after this fight?
That's very interesting because there were speculations flying around that this could definitely be for an interim belt.
Yeah,
it could be because the belt is vacant right now.
Exactly.
Jamal Hill is injured.
For the interim belt, Dana must have thought of something. So what did you think of what happens to the title picture after this? Giri comes back?
I hope so. Everybody is waiting.
Or the vacant title?
No, vacant title. Vacant title. Now it's only a vacant title.
Vacant title. Oh yeah, vacant title. Right.
I think this is definitely has got number one contender implications because the winner of Jan and Alex would definitely be the one in spot to take on Yuri Prohaska or anybody else, depending. Because you've got guys like Ankalev in the wings. You've got Rakic. The problem is that Yuri Prohaska was injured. Jamahal was injured. Rakic is injured. There are so many injuries in that division. It's the curse of the title. Whoever's winning the title is getting injured. Exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see. I will not be surprised if the winner of this match gets maybe either a shot or definitely could. You never know. Dana might surprise you saying and winner.
Do you think by the way, Chironi called out Andrew Tate today to be on the undercard of the Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg fight? Do you really
believe that fight is happening?
That's what I wanted to know. I think it might just end up happening. I don't know, under exhibition rule set, boxing maybe, but something might just end up happening. Do you think they're just selling it?
I think these are all pipe dreams. So it's like when people say, "Oh, return of Brock Lesnar." I've been hearing it for 5 years now. We keep saying return of Brock Lesnar, aega, we don't know what will happen. Now, this is all hype for the fans. It's all hype building tactics. If it happens, I'll be the first one who'll be like, wow, I can't believe it's happening.
But you don't think that's happening?
As far as until I see a contract signed and I see a press conference, I don't believe anything.
Right. Right. I would say the biggest impediment in this is Elon Musk's age. If not, they would have come. Because Zuckerberg is training. He doesn't mind getting down on the cage, I think. So I think Elon Musk's age is the factor. Otherwise, this would have just ended up happening.
I don't know. I really don't know.
All right. So yeah, that'll be all, Arjun.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks a lot for your time. Okay.
Thank you so
Nice
much.
talking to you as always. We'll catch up again later.
Always, definitely. Always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.